For Poland Daily, I'm Phil Goss. The opposition's attempt to dismiss Speaker of the Parliament Ryszard Terlecki and 3 government ministers, Michał Dworczyk, Jacek Sasin and Mariusz Kamiński, has failed. The ruling coalition managed to maintain a united front in the voting process and overcame the very narrow margin which grants it a parliamentary majority. The vote was preceded by an unusually heated debate. The no-confidence vote was mainly driven by the opposition's conviction that the ministers were responsible for alleged mismanagement during last year's presidential election, which had to be postponed by more than 2 months due to the pandemic. You were not competent enough to organize a presidential election. You come out and say, well, I took this car and drove because I had to take my kids on vacation. But it's not your car. It's not your car.
Chwileczkę, czy ja udzieliłam panu głosu? Proszę zejść z mównicy.
Mrs. Arendt mentioned here how the state treasury companies under the management of Prime Minister Sasin helped Poles during the pandemic, how they financed purchases of medical equipment and so on. This is how state companies supported our citizens. And what did they do under your government? They financed your ministers' private dinner parties. Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki also came to the defense of his government ministers. The order to start preparations for the presidential election was passed on to the relevant state entities by Ministers Kamiński and Sasin on my recommendation. Those state entities were supposed to carry out the technical side of envelope production and ballot production, to be precise. It was the right thing to do in order to fulfill our constitutional duties in connection with the election. The voting was conducted just after midnight. 10 out of 11 MPs from Jarosław Gowin's Agreement Party, a junior coalition partner which has often voted with the opposition in recent months, declared their support for the ministers to keep serving in their functions. This surprises me because maybe indeed Mr. Kaczynski spoke with Deputy Prime Minister Gowin and they agreed on some transactionary deal which convinced Gowin to support the ministers. Law and Justice MP Tomasz Latos claimed that it was rather caused by the low quality of the motion for a no-confidence vote submitted by the opposition. We have a stable majority in Parliament and there is no need for concern. We're moving forward, not looking at the games the opposition tries to play. Strengthened by the display of unity in the voting process, government representatives say that now is the time to move ahead with implementing the post-pandemic economic recovery plan that it has named the Polish Deal. Hong Kong's most vocal pro-democracy newspaper, Apple Daily, has printed its last edition after a stormy year in which its tycoon owner and other staff were arrested under a new national security law and its assets frozen. Hundreds of supporters gathered outside Apple Daily's headquarters to show support against the crackdown on press freedoms. The last front page carried a photograph of a staffer waving at supporters with the headline, "Hong Kongers bid a painful farewell in the rain." A Reuters reporter present in the Apple Daily newsroom saw dozens of journalists break into applause once the final edition was sent to print, while some were in tears. One of the newspaper's reporters went outside to distribute free copies and bid farewell to supporters, saying tearfully, "We hope that the people of Hong Kong will fight on. Staying safe is the priority." I would like to thank supporters outside. 2 points. I would like to thank my colleagues and supporters outside. It's hard to control your emotions at this moment. After today, there is no press freedom in Hong Kong. Once tonight's newspaper edition has become our final edition, I cannot see any future in Hong Kong. I feel very disappointed and angry today. I don't understand why our limited group, company, and the newspapers were forced to stop operating under such circumstances. Apple Daily's support for democratic rights and freedoms has made it a thorn in Beijing's side since owner Jimmy Lai, a self-made tycoon who was smuggled from mainland China into Hong Kong on a fishing boat at the age of 12, started it in 1995. The paper shook up the region's Chinese-language media landscape and became a champion of democracy on the margins of communist China. Its demise leaves only a handful of small online outlets on that side of politics, including Stand News and Citizen News. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has decided to pardon 9 separatist Catalan leaders who were jailed over their role in a failed 2017 bid for independence. The government believes the act will infuse goodwill into the upcoming negotiations between Madrid and the Catalan regional government. 7 of the 9 pardoned leaders were greeted by the pro-independence head of the Catalan regional government, Pere Aragonès, outside the Lledoners jail, an hour north of Barcelona, Reuters footage showed. "Amnesty is what we want, and we will achieve it," said former Catalan Parliament Speaker Carme Forcadell as she walked out of a separate jail in Barcelona, calling her release a small victory.
Nosaltres el que volem és l'amnistia.
What we want is amnesty. Today is a day of joy, especially for those who have left prison today and our families. But the joy is not full because what we want is repression to end so every person that has been punished can go out on the street freely like us, and those in exile can return. Today it is a step towards that goal. It is true that it is not a big victory, but it is still a victory because I don't have any doubt that if independence did not win election after election, without the court victories in Europe, without people taking to the street, we wouldn't be here today. Let's use this small victory to achieve our big victory: amnesty, self-determination, and the Catalan Republic. Catalan separatists are seeking a broad amnesty for all those involved in the 2017 independence bid. They were sentenced in 2019 to between 9 and 13 years for sedition and misuse of public funds after an unauthorized referendum on a breakaway that led to a short-lived declaration of independence and Spain's worst political crisis in decades. The pardons are conditional, and a ban on the leaders holding public office remains in place. Madrid has ruled out another referendum on independence. Opinion polls show just about half of Catalonia's population favor splitting from Spain. Meeting with his German counterpart Heiko Maas, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has yet again discussed the Russo-German gas pipeline Nord Stream 2. Despite the U.S. decision not to extend sanctions imposed by President Trump against the parent company behind the project, Mr. Blinken stated that the U.S. remains opposed to the pipeline. Nord Stream 2 is a Russian geopolitical project that undermines the security of Ukraine, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken stated during his visit to Germany, adding that the United States wants to ensure Russia does not use energy as a coercive tool against Europe or Ukraine.
Foreign Minister and I spoke today about one of those areas of disagreement, the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline, which we continue to believe is a threat to Europe's energy security. Germany has a different perspective, and that happens from time to time among friends.
Speaking at a joint press conference in Berlin after meeting his German counterpart Heiko Maas, Blinken said that Washington was determined to see if it can make something positive out of a difficult situation and strengthen Europe's energy security.
And we're determined to see if we can make something positive out of a difficult situation that we inherited, and to do what we can to make sure that the end result is that Europe's energy security is not undermined. In fact, it's strengthened, that Ukraine's position is not weakened, that it's actually reinforced. And that is the nature of the conversations that we're having with our German partners. Our goal remains to ensure that Russia cannot use energy as a coercive tool, as a weapon against Ukraine or anyone else in Europe. And I appreciate the work that we're doing with Germany to move in that direction.
The two men also discussed relations with Iran. Tehran and world powers have been making progress in talks to revive their 2015 nuclear accord, but have yet to overcome major hurdles, according to German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas. Last Sunday, the 6th round of Iran nuclear talks ended. The talks in Vienna were very intense. We are making progress, but there are still some nuts to crack, as we know. The setting of the talks remains complex after the presidential elections in Iran. Maas also stated that a deal was possible even after the election victory of a hardline Iranian president. For Poland Daily, I'm Phil Goss. Good night.